Welcome back to Show Your Real Estate Today. Paul Jamison here with the Jamison family of real estate companies. That's Jamison Realty, Jamison Property Management, Jamison Property Investments. Here with my good friend Sandy Dickinson with Cross Country Mortgage helping me in the studio today, along with Mr. Tyler Bruce, attorney at law with Norwood, Armstrong, and Stokes. This is his first time on here, so give him a good from home welcome, or just honk your horn. That's fine. He doesn't care. Either one of those would be good. You know, Tyler, I'll let you be first because Sandy and I have been talking, me mostly, about when we're meeting with clients. Many, many times they ask each of us the question, I know I should be asking you more questions. What question am I not asking you that I should be asking you? What do you say, Tyler, when they say that?
I always think the most important thing to ask is just to have a two-way conversation about what your goals are. And if you can get into a conversation about the goals, oftentimes things will pop up that you didn't know you needed to talk about or look into, one of which would be, which we'll talk about later, deed restrictions. But so much can be uncovered just by that conversation. And so few times do I see it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, deed restrictions, and Tyler's got some information on Myers Park. So if you're listening from Myers Park, that's going to be some good information for you. What about you, Sandy? Somebody sits down with you and they're trying to apply for a loan or they're trying to get ready and they ask you, I know I should be asking more questions. What question am I'm not asking that I should be asking?
People should be asking what the process is, what it looks like, because otherwise they might get frustrated with what we do, with what we ask for and the time frames and everything, and what kind of money is expected up front versus at closing, what is a point, and what can I expect during the process mainly.
Yeah. I got a call today, so this is a note for the future. I got a call today from a gentleman I met at Positively Matthews. He wants to know and have us do a show on what the process is of an actual kind of beginning to end, including the loan process.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a pretty good show. We might have to make it a series, and then maybe we just, have TJ put it all together and we sell it on the open market. What do you think, TJ? You up for that?
Yeah,
we'll give you some royalty payments.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
$19.99 a pop.
Okay, we'll get Tyler to put the contracts together, and we'll have this done here in no time. That's good. All right. So for me, they have two. One is a lot of times they'll ask me that question, and I'll say, well, it comes to home buying and selling. What I would say is, what can they expect today when they get an offer? Last year, everybody expected an offer to come in an hour. They expected it to be 25 to 50,000 over asking price, and they expected the due diligence money to be a whopper. Right? Mm-hmm. What about now? What does an offer look like now? Well, it doesn't look like that. Sometimes a home will be on the market for 30, 45 days. Sometimes the offer will be at asking price or a little over, or sometimes just slightly below, like we were talking about, 2.5% to 5%. And due diligence fees are getting back to normal. They're, usually, depending on the price of the home, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, depending on how serious they are. So it's the kind of stuff we saw before we went into the great COVID bounce back in 2021. When it comes to property management, they're asking, they should be asking me, how do we screen for tenants? And here is a very brief response to a very longer response I usually give. And that is, if you want to get frustrated about one thing with me, you're going to get frustrated at me about that. And they go, well, why would I get frustrated with you about how you screen tenants? Well, here's the answer. Because I'm tough. And because I'm going to have to give you an answer sometimes that says, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Owner, that I didn't rent your house to that applicant or the second applicant or the third applicant because they didn't qualify to our standards or reasonable standards that we've modeled within the parameters of the law to rent that house. And so I might rent it in a week. I might rent it in a month, and it might take 2 months, but I'm not going to rent it until I got the right person to sign on the line. So I look at income, 3 times the monthly income. I look at their employment. We actually call their employer. I look at national different databases for eviction and arrests and felonies. We look at a lot of different things before we allow somebody in. And by the way, just because they have an 800 credit score doesn't mean I'm going to rent to them. Oh, you say that's terrible. They have an 800 credit score. Yeah, but if they're living on the edge of life, Sandy's not going to give them any money either.
True.
So just know that you're going to hear something like that, probably a little more long-winded. All right, Tyler.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about deed restrictions. What is on your mind? What's going on in Myers Park?
Well, I'd love to talk about it. And Myers Park will be our example, but this applies to a lot of neighborhoods in a town like Charlotte and a lot of towns all across North and South Carolina. But we'll limit it to Myers Park for now. You know, it was developed in the early 20th century. Mr. Myers and George Stevens, who's a little bit of a North Carolina legend for playing football with the University of North Carolina, developed the property. And when they sold everything out, they platted it, which is they drew a map and then sold lots off of that map. And they put restrictions in the deeds to the first owners. And sometimes those were carried through to the next deed and the next deed, and you'll see them real easy today, but sometimes you don't. And when we come into play, when our firm gets involved, we do a title review of the property, but we only have to look back 30 years for North Carolina law, excuse me. And so sometimes those restrictions won't show up, but they still apply, Paul, and they still can make for a headache.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, for instance, Myers Park will have different restrictions across the street from one another sometimes. And one of them that comes to mind is the restriction against building a house higher than 1.5 stories. There's actually a case about this in 2016 where the two sides duked it out, the homeowners and the new builder that was trying to make a house there. They came up with the judge came up with a sort of a legal idea of what 1.5 stories is, but you can drive down the road and see houses that you think, well, I bet I can walk upstairs and go to a bedroom in that second floor. That's 2 floors, isn't it? It's not by that definition. So these things can cause problems. You can be stopped in the middle of construction if you're not careful. And so one of the things that I always say is, let me know if you're going to renovate or tear something down, because you could buy that little 1945 ranch, tear it down, get halfway building it, and have to stop.
Ooh, because of that deed restriction.
Yeah, and many like them. You know, Starmount, Sedgefield, Dilworth, they all have similar things like this in their back title history. And sometimes you can get away with it because the amount of properties in the area that have broken that restriction mean that it's no longer valid. But that's something you need your attorney to look at, and you need to be, as a buyer, letting your agent know, hey, this is what I want to do with the property. And that way the attorney can get involved and we can look at that with a specific eye to what your plans are.
Yeah. So how does the enforcement work for that kind of stuff?
Well, the way that it works normally is that you have all the neighbors on that block, let's say, whoever's on that plat or map, and they'll get together and they'll bring an action against the violating owner. You can also have Myers Park has a voluntary homeowners association, and you pay dues into it, and a lot of neighborhoods do this, and that basically funds the enforcement through the court system because they'll bring a lawsuit to stop it.
Wow. So you go back to some of these title searches, I bet there's some interesting stuff on some of those. I'm guessing
a lot of the time
things about mules and chickens and
chicken coops, outhouses,
buildings and gardens and trees and I'm sure there's some pretty interesting stuff there.
But it's a really good thing because you won't have an outhouse next to you if you build in Myers Park.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
But that's the way everybody did it before HOAs became popular. They were able to make sure that, you built a 500 square foot house or better and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's probably where HOAs got their start. All right, we're going to talk some more with Tyler Bruce. This Show Your Real Estate today. We've got things about auxiliary buildings too, ADUs, that I also want to chat with him about. So Sandy Dickinson, cross country, myself, Paul Jamison, Tyler Bruce. TJ is here making the buttons go. We'll be right back to Show Your Real Estate today. Stay right there.